This is the 8-9 combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and this is the Weekend Post-Mortem. Hello, mate. How is the convalescence at home?
Brett, there's a lot of worse ways to recover from a major knee surgery than to watch, 20 rugby matches. But the challenge is normally I watch, sort of 3 or 4, maybe 5 or 6 max, and I can distinguish between the matches. When you're on drugs and you're watching 20, at some point, all the hoops start to coalesce. The socks become one. Referee, whatever the referee drama was of that match, gets transposed into this match, and you wake up and it's just a big soup. So hopefully we can post-mortem intelligently this week.
Yes. How long have Glasgow been playing in Super Rugby?
Precisely.
That kind of thing. There would be analysts, there would be professional analysts out there in the rugby world who have not watched as much rugby as you have this weekend.
Oh, it's beautiful. Although I watched a lot of really weird Japanese cartoon movies and rugby, so it was awesome.
Good on you.
I didn't watch the Japanese rugby. Sorry.
Good on you. Yeah, living your best life. The post-mortems are starting to hot up now as we pull out the big results from all the big games that grabbed us across the rugby world this weekend. There's a new competition leader and maybe a changing of the guard in Auckland in Super Rugby Pacific. The URC Finals are all set now after some final round movement. Bath have extended their lead in the Prem. Plus, there's top 14 in France still, League One in Japan, quarterfinals of the League One in Japan, and Major League Rugby as well. But first, mate, it's been a weekend of reflection amongst the South African rugby community this weekend.
Yeah, I for many years, until quite recently, owned land in Wellington, which is in the Boerland, one of the most beautiful spots on earth, and is known for having some of the friendliest people on earth. And one of the friendliest people you would have ever met in your life was Coronel Hendricks, rangy winger. You know him from the box if you're not from South Africa, but he was also like a local legend in the terms that he would help people, faithful, religious. He and his wife Stephanie and 2 young kids. He died this week of an apparent heart attack. He had a lot of heart troubles for a long time. For a time, it ruled him out of Springboks.
Just ruled him out of rugby for a while, didn't it?
Yeah, from the get-go. He couldn't play any rugby. Then he came back. He played a little bit in Wales, and then he found a home with the Blue Bulls, who do have a way about them of welcoming you into a family. So this guy from the Boerland and wound up in the Bulls, which is a strange South African story. How beloved he was, I mean. And then so he's passed away, and I would just tell you, it's very difficult to imagine or remember a time when more people were united in grief. And rugby must always stay rugby. Those of us who are privileged and have had fortune in our life need to share, because these guys, a lot of them don't have some cushy pension or life annuity to help their families. And so there's ways to help them, which we're going to publish on socials, and please help me help them. And one of the most likable fellows you'd ever met in elite sport, and small town, and doing what I do, I would know something wrong if something was wrong. Never was a word said about him that was untoward. He was just that kind of guy. So rest in peace, Cornell.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just a tremendous player, and anyone going to a heart condition at 37 is just taken way, way, way too soon. So our thoughts with his family, with his friends, and everyone connected with him in South Africa. It's certainly a sad time. Before we do get into the weekend post-mortem, then, mate, do just let the nice people know again why we would really love them to subscribe to the 8-9 combo and edge us a little closer to 8,000 subscribers.
Oh, I just think it's cool to belong to winning teams. So, we're already winners at 5,000. But when you get to 8,000, it's kind of like you get to say, but I knew these guys when they were just at 8,000, because we're going to get to 10, 15, 20, 100,000. We are. It's inevitable. Yeah. So be in the ground floor of a rising enterprise.
We didn't even think about the 6,000s. We just sailed through that. But do please hit the red subscribe button down there in the bottom corner. If you haven't already on YouTube, and if you're listening to the 8-9 Combo on Spotify, on Apple Pods, on any of the pod platforms, then hit follow, hit subscribe, hit like, whatever it might be that you need to do, and you won't miss a minute, most importantly. Let's get into it then, mate. It was round 14 of Super Rugby Pacific, and there was some interesting results there. Where do you want to start in those games this weekend?
Well, there was one game that sort of was different from all the rest. The other ones kind of went by a pattern, but Hurricanes Highlanders was weird because there was an overwhelming advantage. The Hurricanes, the Canes, just absolutely pummeled the Landers on every statistical category you can imagine. It should have, if you just looked at it and you kind of watched it for a bit, you would say, "Oh, this is going to be Hurricanes by 7 tries to 1."
Yes.
But Highlanders did a thing that they've learned from a long time ago by being the weakest team in the New Zealand conference. Is they know how to hang in there and frustrate you.
Yes.
So deep into the match, our friend Digby Ross was still hanging on for dear life and doing what he does best, which is swear at his own team. So, but there they are.
It was a funny old game. I didn't see it live on Friday night. I had family over, in fact, so I had to watch everything on delayed on Friday night. So I didn't actually get to Hurricanes Highlanders until late Friday night, in early hours of Saturday morning, in fact. And I'm watching along through the second half. I'm thinking, why aren't the Hurricanes leading by like 25? They were just dominating every facet of the game, and somehow they, were not only weren't leading by 25, they weren't leading at all. And I thought, surely, and I'd managed to ignore you guys in our international chat group. I managed to avoid the score. I was watching it live, and I'm thinking, surely they're not going to lose this. Surely they can't play this dominant and nearly lose it. Yeah, look, it was. I mean, credit to them for finding a win where maybe earlier this year they might not have found that one. So that's probably a sign of a team that has got better over the year.
Yeah, exactly. The other games I thought went more to sort of a script in that when the Waratahs went up against the Crusaders, even though Waratahs are at their supposed fortress and they did score 33 points, Crusaders outkicked them 29-22 kicks. They won the turnover battle. The Crusaders on the floor with some of the unheralded players. Is Christie, that guy, just a battler?
Tom Christie,
So they win going away. And the real interesting part is the explosion of emotion post-match by guys like Jake Gordon, by Dan McKellar. Some of the statements that were made, like malaise, and this is the worst, and
systemic failings.
Yes, and it was troubling for those of us who want rugby in Sydney. Obviously, I think rugby in the Sydney area has to go well for Australia to be in a good mood. I don't know if it's necessary for it to be a good wallaby, but to be in a good mood, because so much of the news media emanates from there. And,
absolutely. And they'd won the 5 games at home, and they hadn't necessarily looked great doing it. They'd got the results, but they were the first to say, we are a long way from being happy with the way we're playing. And the last 2 weeks, Queensland and now the Crusaders, I'm not sure whether they walked under a ladder on the way out or anything like that, but it was just a case of a team that has been below their best has now run out of luck completely. And they were dead lucky to get the 33, because that should have been a bigger thumping than it was, I think.
I think that's true. They've also put themselves, with all due respect to Dan, they put themselves into a position now where they made odd selection choices at 10 for a lot of the season. Then they throw Tane Edmund in and expect him to do something. And also, don't kick. Well, you needed to kick a lot that night. It was the weather predicted it, and the Crusaders went with it, 29 kicks to 22. And a lot of those 22 kicks were just exits. There wasn't any idea on how to unlock the Crusader defense with cleverly placed kicks. And so also when you're the 10 who finally gets to come in, then you have a lot of pressure on you because you don't have time on the saddle. You don't have time to make a few mistakes here and there. And so
because you're bought in, you're parachuted in as the as the solution to all the problems. And so everyone's just sort of sitting there going, "Come on, fix it."
It's Waratah brain to me. They seem to have got into this kind of cycle for years now. Maybe this is systemic, where the coach, in a way, becomes grumpy about his own team. And I would just say, Dan, don't do it. I mean, you've got plenty of talent there. It's not all on, picking out a few players who didn't run hard enough. Find the right shape for this particular team. And if you scored 33 points against the Crusaders, the problem is not on the attack so much. You've got to find a way to make it harder to score against you.
Yeah. No, it's a good shout. And look, I'll give him credit. He has got that ability to, work out where a team sits, and then come back from that. When he first took over, the Brumbies, they ran 10th, and that was the first year they missed the finals in like 4 or 5 straight seasons. But the following year they ran 3rd. So he knows how to rebuild, rejig, rehash a side and get what he needs to be successful again. So watch this space, Waratahs fans, is what I would say there. The Drua were pretty comfortable. That was secured a 9th straight win in Lautoka with that thumping over the Western Force. But Moana Pacifica, I mean, do we have to call them the top dogs now in Auckland with a derby win?
Well, that our friend Tony Johnson was saying throughout the broadcast and at the end that he had never seen a better individual performance in Super Rugby than the one Artie Savea put on, and he did it all courts. I would say that the Drua and the Moana won in ways that are not always associated with them. In which what I'm saying is Fijian Drua outkicked the Force 7 by 7, so they kicked 7 more times. This is not something you associate with them. And then that opened up, that sped up the possessions they did have to where they beat a defender that busted a tackle 1 out of every 5 carries. But Moana kicked 32 times, and they accepted the conditions and what they were, and they relied on the defense.
Nothing like the way they played. Yeah.
And then they did a plus 10 turnover. So by putting the kicks in awkward spaces and then putting, if you're chased down by a wing, it's one thing. But if you're chased by 3 chasers and one of them is Artie Savea, the chances are he's going to turn you over. When all you can do is rise in the air. You have to give access. Rise in the air, catch it. You get tackled, and Artie's the second man in.
Yeah, good luck surviving that. Yeah.
So I thought it was a triumph for tactics, not just Artie's brilliance. I thought the 27-21 win was well deserved by coaching, by the team itself, and and I think they dented some of the All Blacks' reputations. There were some guys out there that did not look as good as I thought they would.
I completely agree. There's a lot of guys in that Blues forward pack, particularly, whose reputations were enhanced significantly last year as being this hard-nosed, hard-edged, direct team straight up the middle, and I'm not sure how many of those reputations are still intact now. They've been really disappointing this year.
They're doing something too much, which is picking from the base and going through the ruck as a carrier, which worked a year ago when you had 4 or 5 guys able to bust through and do that. But now that it's so well known, there's just ways to get around that. And sometimes Moana just stood off, let them come through, flop, and then they went for the pilfer. I mean, 19 turnovers by the Blues.
It's incredible. Yeah. Everyone is defending a lot better around those pillar post positions at the back of the rucks now. You can't just bash through on the edges anymore. So a fantastic win. And news Sunday night, Artie Savea, 2 weeks out from the end of the season, has been crowned Super Rugby Pacific Player of the Year. He has an unassailable lead. He took the full points, the maximum points out of that game on Saturday in Auckland, and so he is the inaugural Super Rugby Pacific Player of the Year. And
there'll be no debates.
No. It's like he can't be caught. There'll be no argument. He has just been the dominant player this season. There's no question about it at all. The Brumbies, though, are on top of the table, and they were. It was really interesting, the Brumbies, and they beat Queensland 24-14 in Canberra. Sideline and our call for ABC Sport, the contest was absolutely fantastic, and Laurie Fisher, the Wallabies senior assistant coach, is in commentary with us, and he was absolutely raving for the quality of the contest, the game, the breakdown contest, the pressure, and then the skill execution, the face of that pressure. He couldn't get enough of it. Like you said, that's the sort of thing you expect from the very, very best New Zealand derby, and not typically an Australian derby, but that was every bit as good as it. But talking to the players out in the field for a couple of live interviews and all that, they were actually a little bit annoyed about some of their execution, and they were, sort of thought they were a bit clunky at times. And so this is really, really interesting. We've got two almost polar opposite views on this, and they're probably both carry an element of truth about it. There's focuses on different areas, but it was really interesting to hear Laurie upstairs, raving about the quality of the game we've had, and then talk to the guys at the middle of it, and they're like, "Oh yeah, but we didn't do this, we didn't do that," and it was interesting.
I can see both sides of that. I engaged a little bit with Laurie and talked about
Saw
how
that,
many
yeah.
rucks were built and how many tackles had to be made for the shape of the game to ensue. I suppose as coaching for the Reds, you would look at it and say, but our penalty count was way too high.
Yep.
There was a lot of offloading, but it seemed like some of those offloads actually backfired. And then the Reds slowed down in the red zone. It's almost like the red zone should not be called the red zone for the Reds. It's like the orange zone or something. They just kind of go into this
Yeah.
cautious mode,
The not
and
red zone.
Brumbies, what's the death in all golf is you decelerate in a swing.
Yeah.
You can almost get away with a bad shot as long as you accelerate. And I felt like the Brumbies accelerated into contact and into breaks,
Yeah.
whereas the Reds seem to almost reassemble. Besides maybe for a tape break or something, but the team as a whole seemed to slow down. And I don't know if it was people they're missing or if they're being too tentative, but I see where Laurie's going with that, but I can also see the players thinking,
Yep.
oh man, we could have done better with what we had, because neither side to me really found their top gear.
No, that's probably fair. I've still not seen a 22 entries number yet, but I feel like Queensland, and I said as much on air last night. I feel like Queensland will have been annoyed that they couldn't do more with the opportunities they had.
Yeah,
and I asked Les Kiss that question in the post match, and he said, yeah, it's a bit of a frustration of theirs as well, that they're not able to convert as much as they are. Whereas conversely, the Brumbies, I suspect, had 6, 7, 8. 22 entries, and they scored 4 tries. So
we know they had far fewer carries and far fewer far fewer carries, and so it's just more efficient.
yes,
for sure.
yeah, it was
I don't know.
about,
Sometimes they can originate from the 24-meter line. It's still almost almost red zone. I feel like there was a lot of opportunities that Reds just spun, and they got into this thing where they'll milk a penalty, but then sometimes the penalty went on them on attack. No, I think for sure Brumbies established themselves as the leader. Reds have a series of work-ons to do, and also I was reflecting during the match. God, 2026, the middle of 2026 is a long way away, Les Kiss. This could be a really strange setup if this keeps happening.
Absolutely. And look, it's interesting just to have a very, very quick look at the table there. There's now a real gap between the Crusaders in third and the Reds in fourth. And then the Hurricanes are only 2 points behind them. Moana and the Blues are only 2 points behind that again. So all the top three is secured. But the order might change, but the top three is the top three now. But 4, 5, 6, 7, I feel like there's still a bit in play there over the next there's 2 rounds left to go there. So plenty to talk about there. It was the 18th and final round of the United Rugby Championship, the URC. What do you think there? The Stormers have suddenly got good in the last month to send Cardiff packing out of the top 8, as you mentioned.
Yeah, well, it's a bit like the stop the count thing, where that there's votes coming in at the end that's going to change it, but then you want to stop the count. So the Stormers always had a really nice home run at the end. So anyone who was looking at it and being intelligent about it would go, oh, but they're probably going to get a lot of points from the final 4 games. And they've actually exceeded that. Bulls, I think, also
they won all 4, didn't they? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Bulls had a successful tour abroad, which actually helped them as well, because they had a good home run. And then the Sharks are doing this thing where they just narrowly win, frustrate everyone, but they still sit there in third place, so much higher than they were a year ago in whatever it was, 14th place or something. So you have good news stories, but it came down to these things, which is who's going to play where. And so the Stormers, by taking a kick, Sasha took a kick at the very end to go 34-24, dashed Cardiff's hopes. But then again, Damien Willemse was lazy in a tackle and got red carded. So there was good news and bad news for the Stormers. Edinburgh went to Ulster and just gave them a hiding and snuck in so that they're gonna, have a fun date against the Bulls in Loftus, who took care of the Dragons quite easily. And then Munster, that frustrating Munster team, just keeps crawling back in. So they take care of Benetton and
Benetton have dropped from 7th to 10th, so they haven't just missed out. They've dropped. They have just missed out still, but that's a hard drop, 7th to 10th.
Amazing away strip by Benetton. And so Peter Armani's mom steals the show. The head of state for Ireland is on hand to talk about things and is doing interviews. And Peter Armani's mom is crashing the interview with a big sign saying that she's retiring from being Peter's gardener. She's not going to mow his yard anymore because now that he's retiring, he can do his own. And she's doing that. Well, at the same time, Peter is giving an interview live and he sees his mom on the screen and he goes, "Jesus wept." And then that's my mom. And it keeps going. Brilliant. Yeah. So Munster goes and messes around with the Sharks in the Shark Tank. It's a Bok-laden team. On team sheet, you have at least 13 Boks that can start. But John Plumtree has not found the magic there to make them excited and want to play. But I still think, damn it, I think the Sharks are probably going to win and going to be in the semifinals against the Bulls, and they play the Bulls really well.
They've finished third. They're not that well. They finished ahead of Glasgow.
Yes,
and Glasgow haven't had the greatest.
They have more wins. They have the third most. There's no bonus point trickery here.
Yes,
they have the third most wins, and they will probably take care of Munster, who's probably at the end of their rope, and then they will go to Loftus. And that the Sharks they've been 50% against the Bulls for a while now.
Yeah,
so that's going to be a hell of a derby. Whereas Stormers have to go and play in the fading Glasgow, who looks like they're not that interested anymore. But Leinster also looks like they're suffering a little bit. So now the almighty favorites, Leinster, are not as almighty anymore.
No, there are the quarterfinals, and we'll get back to these in a week and a half's time. Obviously, once when the quarterfinals are on. But yes, the Glasgow play the Stormers, Leinster host Scarlets, the Bulls will host Edinburgh, and the Sharks will host Munster, as you say. The Sharks are funny. They've, in much the same way the Stormers are suddenly fifth, the Sharks are third. And when did that happen? When did the Sharks get themselves in order to actually climb the ladder like they have? And I feel like I've been saying the words that says that they've been doing it for the last 6 or 8 weeks, and I just haven't been comprehending it evidently, because it was sort of really, when did that happen?
It's like they haven't really been winning, but they haven't been losing either. So
that's probably true.
What happens when that happens is you end up having a pretty good record.
That's
no one beats you, but no one's really happy. You're not throwing in tries, but you're like, hey, so what?
It was a quiet night for scoreboard attendance in Durban and Dublin. Low scoring games. What was it 12-3 in Dublin? Not a try scored.
12-3 in
Durban. Sorry, yeah.
And then in Leinster, I think, Glasgow's scrum let them down. I think they had every shot of turning them over, but they couldn't form a scrum, and that will get you. So now we have this interesting thing where what we would have said before is Stormers have to go to Glasgow. They're done. No, they might win. Leinster will surely take care of their quarterfinal, but they then have to face maybe a Stormers team that's getting better and better at the wrong time for them, with everyone coming back. And then the other semi-final side, you might have a just storming derby between the Sharks and the Bulls. It's going to be good fun.
Could be fun. Could be a lot of fun. Yeah. It was round 17 of the Premiership. The Sale took back third spot with that 41-27 win over Bristol, and they looked pretty good doing that, I've got to say.
And leapfrogged. Yeah, they leapfrogged Bristol. I think, George Ford is one of those guys. He's like the Colin Montgomery in golf, where, the greatest golfer not to win a major.
Yeah,
George
yeah,
Ford, I cannot believe he's not a Lion. He's such a good footballer. He's so
yeah,
good at tight games and managing them. Anyway, yeah, let's say Sale's been a problem for this for a while now, and they're going to be a tough out. But to me, the match of that whole weekend was the Saints upsetting the Saracens on the
yeah,
final play with a dodgy,
yeah,
dodgy
yeah,
offload, and then another one, and you go,
yeah.
oh, you when you say the hands in
So
the lap of the gods, I think there's something brewing at the Saints this year where they might very well do something very remarkable to
they're
Bordeaux.
just they're just gearing up for the Champions Cup final, aren't they? I mean, they've used this last 3 weeks back in the Premiership as just live firing sessions, just to get ready for anything that Bordeaux was going to throw at them, and they were good. They'll be annoyed that they let Saracens go back into that, because I think they were actually pretty dominant in that second half. But yes, it was
Hey,
that
Aussie
last
fans,
that
you need to
last try was
watch Josh Kemeny, and stop telling me, oh yeah, that just shows you how much better Super Rugby is than rugby in the North. Josh Kemeny has grown.
no,
He was voted the Player of the Year by the players. He was voted in a separate award, Player of the Team by the coaches, and he is turning into a monster. And he was up
yeah,
against proper like Maro Itoje. He's playing against
yeah.
Lions. Yeah,
He
so good
was, yeah, it
test.
was, and switched sides. The scrum. He's been playing 6 all year, and he had 7 on his back this week, and played. I mean, played the same way, but he was really good. Scored the first try, and that got the Saints going. So we're saying it was definitely a forward pass then from Dingwall to Litchford for the
It
last
was,
try.
but it all came down to the call on the field first. So you have to set up.
There's 2 elements here. Yeah, go
Yeah.
on.
So once you frame the issue, then it will control what you come up with. They didn't have the best angles, and part of that's because there were weird offloads, and it was very
Yeah,
dynamic, and you didn't
yeah.
have a fifth like a perfect sideline view with the camera right on the line.
No.
It was all three quarters and diagonal, so you had to do some extrapolation. So it
Yes,
wasn't
yes.
clear.
So that's exactly what I was going to say. All the angles that we saw, there is no question that the pass from Dingwall to Litchfield, which was the second last pass, there's no question the ball went forward. What we didn't see was an angle tight enough to actually see whether the hands went back or whether they went forward.
Exactly.
So
Momentum. Yeah. Yep.
yeah, you couldn't tell whether it was momentum or whether it was thrown forward. And then I think referee and TMO got themselves a bit tied up talking about both passes, and at one point they seemed to clear the second one without actually having looked at it, and then they went back to the first one, and then I think they were talking about the second one, and it all got a little bit muddled there in the end. What I will say is the some of the social media commentary for it is hilarious, and I genuinely saw tweets and comments and headlines along the lines of, "This is outright corruption."
Wow. Calm down,
And
everyone.
in terms of questionable decision overreactions go, if you're going straight for outright corruption, that's probably taking it a little bit too far. So
Yeah.
anyway, it was a bit funny, but we get to see what Northampton are really made of, obviously, next week in a Champions Cup final. Bath blew Leicester away with a 4-try second half, and they look very, very good doing it, mate.
Their 8-9 combination. And we know that Joe
Yes,
Schmidt thinks that 8-9 combinations are the key to rugby.
he thinks it's the
Uh,
be all and end all of any team. Is basically paraphrasing what he said.
Mop-headed Alfie Barbary and then Quicksilver, Ben Spencer, they were a real weapon together.
Yeah, they
Now
were.
listen, I did have a chat. I like to drop these chats with Michael Cheika because they're fun. And he basically was, see, I told you we're not ruthless enough. And so what he got from that was that it wasn't so much blown away as the Tigers were in there with a shout at a certain point and then didn't
And then they
convert
suddenly weren't.
in the 10 meters and the 10-meter zone where they had, I think they constructed at least two lineouts within 10 meters of the line and came away with they were pilfered, I think,
Yeah, I was going to say
twice.
they turned it over at least once. Yeah,
That will kill
might have
you.
been
And you
knock on
and
too.
and I can see what he means now is that, and they play the Falcons next, so they'll bank points and they'll be fine and
Yeah,
they'll be
yeah,
probably a home semifinal anyway. But
yeah.
I do think they have to develop that killing edge and the other teams have it. What Bath can do is just turn to a power game and just
Yeah,
decide for a while, for 10, 15, 13 minutes, we're just gonna roll you for a while and see what
yeah,
happens. And
yeah. No,
it's been working.
it's a good shout. It's a good shout. Harlequins Exeter is still to come. It's the final round on Saturday, the 31st of May. All 5 games will all kick off simultaneously, which is going to make things difficult to watch. I don't know how many screens you've got going, but I don't have 5, that's for sure. It was round 24 of the top 14. I think this weekend was more about who didn't win, mate. Poe held on to beat Toulon 25-21 after the leading 25-0 after 49 minutes. Stade Francais beat Lyon 31-30 with a 78-minute penalty goal. And then Racing 92 beat Toulouse 37-35 in a second half that was all over the place. There must have been 4 lead changes.
Yeah, I was wondering when the last time was that those particular teams all lost in the same weekend. Probably a long time. The only one of the top teams that carried through was Bordeaux. Um,
I'm just predicting that someone in the YouTube comments will say it happened 3 weeks ago.
yeah, maybe, but that's a constellation of results there, which is surprising because of
Yeah.
who they were playing.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know. I think top 14 is kind of in this glide path towards their semifinals.
It's a holding pattern. This
Yeah.
weekend felt like a holding pattern. I feel like there was players being rested. They're all going to take next weekend off, and it'll all
That
be
being
fine.
said, I will extol the virtues to everyone of looking at our friend Hugh Griffin's YouTube channel and watch
Absolutely.
his odyssey to watch Toulon versus Toulouse in
Yep. In
Marseille.
Marseille. Yeah.
Brilliant. It's great
It's a
storytelling, and
Yep.
it's a proper little film. It's an art film.
It's a great little clip. Look up Hugh Griffin Rugby, HG Rugby on the socials. It is a great little 12 or 14 minutes maybe. Very, very well put together, well shot. It's a great little story.
And notice his spectacles. He wears some really cool shades. He has his trademark hat, and he walks around.
Black
And
cap.
what he captures is two things at once, which I've always remarked about being in France. Is on the one hand, the city of Marseille didn't even know this thing was going on because it's such a big,
Yes,
giant
true.
port city with plenty of going on, and probably more into the soccer. On the other hand, when you're around the stadium, the pageantry of those two
Yeah.
teams and the degree of fervor and how much they hate each other. I mean,
Yeah.
really, it's really remarkable to watch. It's
It
beautiful.
was great. It was really, really good. It was the quarterfinal, the qualifying final weekend of League One in Japan. That is what the finals looks like, and I can tell you that the Kobelco Kobe Steelers beat Shizuoka 35-20, and so they will play Toshiba in the semi-final next weekend. That's the left-hand side of that graphic if you're watching us on YouTube. If you're listening to us, then just go and find the YouTube channel and find it. And Kubota Spears beat Suntory 20-15 on the other side of the draw, and they'll play Panasonic next weekend as well. The first leg of the relegation games next weekend as well. So I'll work out who's playing who, and we'll talk about that midweek. And it was round 13 of Major League Rugby, mate. Miami Sharks they've hit their straps in the last month. That was a really, really good win, 30-19 over New England. But the Sabercats have consolidated the Western Conference lead, haven't they? That 40-19 win over Utah.
Yeah, I didn't. So I didn't see their match. I did watch a little bit of the West Coast drama, and that was cool.
Yep.
For
Seattle,
anyone,
San Diego, yeah.
yeah, that's a nice. That's sort of turned into a derby of its own. For anyone who hasn't watched any MLR, I would say take a look at it again. Whatever you thought you knew about it 2 or 3 years ago, take a look at it now. The standard of play has risen.
Yeah.
There's getting a lot of people from Argentina, which has really helped the competition as well. And there's plenty of Aussies to watch. Some
Yeah.
really good Safas that are well known under 20 South African levels, and so the whole comp I think is rising a bit. And interesting enough, Antoine Dupont has bought into it.
Yes, that's interesting. He's bought a stake of RFC LA, hasn't he?
Yeah,
Which is only, and Ma Nonu bought a chunk of San Diego, I think. So there's some money coming into it.
Players becoming owners now. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, there you go. Big Argentinian contingent led by Thomas Cubelli at Miami. And as I say, they've really come good in the last month. So they've been stoking up the results.
A lot of the established Argentina players already landed pretty well in Europe, but it's the young guys, some 19, 18, 21-year-old guys that are top level, because Argentina's been good at under 20 level, and they are finding the pathway through MLR to be good. And then teams from England or Ireland might watch them, pick them up
from there. Yeah,
so that farm system is really raising the levels.
Yeah, cool. That's good. It's good to see. Anything else we need to wrap this weekend, mate? This has gone about 15 minutes longer than I thought it might this weekend. I didn't think there was as much to talk about.
I think I'm done. I'm going to go back to icing my leg.
I have noticed the blanket just creeping up on you as we get further deeper into this. It's
my comfort.
You've turned 60 whilst we've recorded this, I think. The Weekend Post-Mortem is then behind us. Harry and I remain on the socials in our usual places at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. Tell us what you think by finding and following the 8-9 Combo on Twitter, on YouTube, and on Blue Sky as well. Have your say right here in the 8-9 Comment YouTube channel. And if you're listening on Spotify, you can leave a comment there and we'll absolutely come back to you if you do leave us a comment. So please do that. Please share us as far and wide as you can. Leave us a rating or review wherever you can as well. It all is very, very much appreciated. This is the 8-9 Combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. I'm Brett McKay. He's Harry Jones, and we will be back in your ears in just a few days' time for another great rugby chat.
Come on, play with us.